the class. All right, so welcome everybody to the first ever Biogeosciences Job Market Mentoring Hour. I'm Jen Glass at Georgia Tech, and I'm happy to be your moderator for this series. And I just want to say this is going to be happening every other Friday this fall. So check out our upcoming hours we have coming up. And you can see this flyer. This is on our website. They're all free. And we hope you'll join us also for the research statement, cover letter, and DEI statement. They're all going to be awesome. And great. Oh, yeah, thanks for perfect. All right. Was that my next slide?
This is a slide I popped in just so we know where we're going.
Okay, great. So this is our outline for the session. It's going to be recorded for the first part. I'm going to go through ground rules. I'm going to introduce our speaker. Our speaker is going to give their statement. We're going to survey some questions and a tool to help you start. Then we're going to end the recording and we're going to do breakout rooms and then come for 15 minutes. And then we're going to come back and do whole group discussion and open questions. So it's going to be an action-packed hour and we hope you get a lot out of it. And we are going to be using the statements that those of you that sent in statements, we're going to be using those anonymized. And
oh, is she frozen for everyone else?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just take over while she's. So yeah, so we're going to be using anonymized statements. We're going to talk about some ground rules we'd like you to all use when thinking about this, right? We're here to give constructive and helpful feedback. We're not here to tear anyone down. It's all about trying to help learn and grow as a community. Speaking of which, if you are back, all right.
I'm sorry, I'm back. Should I re-record or is it still recording?
It's still going. We're all good.
Of course, it kicks. My internet fails right when I'm giving the intro. Okay, so if you're looking for jobs, check out our new job board on EGU Biogeosciences website. Scroll down, check out all of our jobs we put together in all kinds of faculty, but also postdoc, PhD, etc. Oh yeah. Our internet just kicked us out at Georgia Tech, and last, I'd like to, hopefully my internet's working. I'd like to, ground rules. So just very quickly, please, be conscious, taking space and making space in your breakout groups. I want to acknowledge these ground rules are courtesy of Rob Ulrich, Reclaiming STEM Institute. Please take a minute to allow processing. We don't have to speak all the time. If you're someone who often speaks up, maybe say your piece, but then kind of step back and allow others to provide theirs. It's okay if there's a few seconds of silence. I know it seems awkward, but let's allow that to allow processing and others to make their voices heard. Both and thinking, two things can be true at the same time. Be respectful. Please don't talk over or heckle others. Don't be derogatory. Goes without saying, hopefully. Talk about the statement, not about the author. That kind of removes some of the personal perspectives and just talks about how we can improve the text as opposed to anything personal. Only constructive criticism. And instead of pros and cons, let's say what they did well, what could be improved. And let's not even worry about micromanaging English grammar. Those kind of small English things can be fixed at the end. We really want to talk about the content as opposed to just the nitty-gritty like grammar stuff that they can always fix. Please, if you have any issues, if you see any non-compliance with these things, please, you could just private message me on Zoom or you can email me, the address there. Anyone asked to stop unacceptable behavior is expected to comply immediately. Violation will result in being asked to leave, and any kind of Zoom bombing or unauthorized sharing of any content will result in immediate ejection from Zoom, and I have the power to do so. So last but not least, very importantly, I'd like to introduce our speaker, the amazing Dr. Jessie Bloom Bateman, they, he pronouns, assistant professor at SUNY Cortland, diversity faculty fellow, and prodigy fellow at SUNY Cortland. And they are our amazing co-chair of the AGU Biogeosciences DEI committee. with an outstanding CV. And I'm going to turn it over to Jesse without further ado.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so thank you all for having me. As a heads up for folks who don't know about SUNY Cortland, as I'm sure everybody knows, it's world famous. It's great. It is a primarily undergraduate institution, so it's a teaching institution. All of our graduate students are Masters of Education students, of which in STEM we have only a few. So if you are thinking on more of a teaching perspective and like getting into a teaching space, that's really where I wanted to go and where I ended up. That being said, even if you're applying to an R1, they are looking that you are thinking about your philosophy of teaching, thinking about how you are going to support student learning. But it might be, instead of just undergrad focused, it's undergrad, grad, postdoc, like across much broader spectrum. All right, so I know y'all are busy, and I wanted to get out ahead in case anyone decides they need to leave or just needs to do other things. These are like my big takeaways for what I think will be helpful when people are writing their statements that I often find people are missing. So make sure your language agrees with your philosophy and that it's supporting your language. A real one that used to come up a lot is when people started talking about student-focused language, or yeah, student-focused teaching. They were still in their statements writing with, I will do this. I give these types of assignments. I do these things. If you say that you want to be student-focused and then your writing is all self-focused, it has a disconnect and makes it harder to see for a reader to see that you are supporting your own arguments. Use the past as a foundation, but also don't forget to sell the readers on a future. Your goal is to convince the readers that you're going to be the next best thing at their institution and how you're going to come in and help them be great for their students, great for the other faculty there, and just great for the whole community. If you only talk about the things you've done, you haven't taken the time to guide them into what you're going to be doing there, haven't helped them develop the dream of having you on campus. 3, your packet is holistic, so you want to be able to connect themes across your statements and make sure that they don't conflict, right? So that's just making sure that you're consistent across your statements of what you're talking about. And also use, like, in your teaching statement, you might talk a little bit about your research, but how you use research as a teaching and learning tool. In your research statement, you might talk a little bit about how you are incorporating, or in your teaching, yeah, or how you're incorporating your own research into your students' classes, and so they're getting a better teaching or a better learning experience. Or if they don't include a, say, diversity statement, it's also a spot where you can include that. Lastly, readers will have limited time, so like you want to take it seriously, but don't let perfection be the enemy of good. If you take forever to get it done and you don't actually get it in on time, or you don't finish everything else because you needed to get it just perfect, it's not going to help you get that job. All right, so with these points, I want to give a couple examples from my own teaching statement. If you wanted to follow along, then like just look at my whole statement in the drive, and this is the drive we'll be using later. Let's see, can I actually show for a second? What you'll see is that in that drive, there is a folder for an activity, shared statements, so that'll be what we do in the breakout rooms, and then also a my teaching statement. Yeah. On current slide. All right. So first off, your language agrees with your philosophy and supports your argument. So these are just excerpted out of my teaching statement. So I had in my teaching statement, I directly call out what I think is really important to me in terms of learning and being an educator. So learning and teaching are both iterative processes that require assessment and reflection. Learning in the environmental sciences works best when the abstract is connected to real-world examples and hands-on interactions. I then later connect back to what I say I think is important with a specific example of how I have done this in the past and how this example is supporting these ideals. All right, so I recently applied these principles in the ecology section of the general biology for non-majors course that I co-teach at Cal State LA. The first time I taught the course, I designed an activity for students to use their understanding of ecology to debate the merits of a restoration project in Southern California. The restoration plan was under discussion in the California legislature. Thus, the students were able to see the real-world application of ecology and management decisions. In this way, students who did not intend to major in biology were exposed to the importance of ecology to their own lives as informed citizens. The next paragraph, they're two different paragraphs, they're not right next to each other, in case you're wondering why it might sound like a jump. While the debate went well based on exam results, students' written feedback indicated that many felt underprepared to apply their course knowledge to a debate. As such, in the current iteration of the class, I incorporate small group debates culminating in the whole class activity. This develops students' ability to apply their knowledge to new scenarios, such as debates. All right, so here I've given my two of my ideas, right? Learning and teaching is iterative and requires assessment and reflection. So that's backed up in the second paragraph where I talk about, yes, I assessed it and they did well, but actually attitudinally, they did not feel fully supported in it. So I needed to reflect upon and develop greater scaffolding to assist my students. And then the second point about connecting to real world, there we've got, it's a actual debate that is occurring. And how are we going to have students be informed? Let's have them simulate essentially what the California legislature is doing, but in the classroom. Right. Next, use the past as a foundation and sell the readers on the future. So this is just, in my teaching statement, I had essentially three sections: my philosophy, my teaching/learning, and then examples from teaching and learning, and then a mentoring section. And at the end of both the teaching and learning section and the mentoring section, I came out and said, these are the things that I want to do at SUNY Cortland. So essentially saying, this is what I want to bring. If you think this is a good idea, you want to have me here. For the sake of time and the fact that it's available online, I'm not going to read these ones fully. I realize I'm running a little short. But I do want to point out, and this will vary depending upon the level of institution. I can speak to smaller institution for our applications. I love to see it when someone is applying and they actually know faculty either on campus or ways that they will engage and make collaborations with faculty at campuses nearby. It shows that you have taken the time to customize or to personalize your application to the institution. You're not just sending out mass broad stroke applications. And so what I'm talking about is while SUNY Cortland does not have PhD students, I aim to provide this experience for students by establishing research collaborations with labs at PhD granting institutions in the region, such as Drs. Sparks and Goodell at Cornell. Right. Yeah, so that is, I think, important, is making sure you're customizing it, helping them see yes, this is not just a generic future, it is a future for our institution. And then lastly, your packet is holistic. Connect themes across your statements and make sure they don't conflict. So for me, so the call I was hired through was explicitly about diversifying the professoriate and better supporting students from marginalized communities. So I wanted, across everything I do, I wanted to say, like, yeah, this is who I am. This is why I care about it. Like, being someone who has been othered in education has been really important, like, has formed how I think about and care about what I do. And so I wanted to beat them over the head with, like, this is who I am as a person. If it isn't okay with you, you don't want to hire me because I'm going to be like this in every faculty meeting. I'm going to be like this in when I meet with the dean or anyone else. Right? And so this is also a way that if, say, they don't have a diversity statement, which at this point, not going to lie, if someone tries to have an application that doesn't ask for a diversity statement or some understanding of how you're going to make a more inclusive space for your students, that's problematic in and of itself, and to me would have red flags. Yeah. All right. So those are my points and the from and some of the excerpts from my statement that I feel supported them. You might read that and say, like, oh, well, that kind of does it, but I don't think it was super great. That's the point. Like, you only need to be good enough to get the job. It doesn't need to be perfect. And then the last thing, or second to last thing we have before jumping into breakout sessions, there were some questions that folks answered in the survey, or questions that folks raised in the survey that I wanted to try and just address before we go into breakout. And you'll have a chance later to ask questions as well. So the first one was, and some of these you might not see yours specifically, but there were common themes that I tried to group together. I was fortunate enough to be on fellowship for most of my PhD and do not have much teaching experience. How can I build a compelling statement with this exposure? So I think there, what you want to be doing is two things. One, like, not all teaching and learning occurs in the formal settings of a classroom. So did you mentor students? Did you have undergrads or junior grad students on your research projects? If you did, you should include those things. Are you seeking out chances to gain teaching experience, be it working on a community garden or helping like high school students, or I mean, even just taking education classes? Like, all of those things show that you have thought about how you would like to be as an educator and that you have some basis to build upon. Most people or most committee members know that your PhD is focused on research, not on being a teacher, like most PhDs at least. And they're not expecting you to come in and be a perfect educator right off the bat. It's more of like, can you show you have put in the effort to develop and you're someone they could see developing in a great way? What details are necessary? How much is too much? How far back can we go to build our story of why? What are the most important components of teaching statements? So it's sort of like looking at, like, how do we build this statement? How do we make sure that it isn't overwhelming, but also gets our point across? So first off, you want to be concise. Think like readers probably going to have 5 to 15 minutes to review it. So how do you make sure you get it across really quick, the main points, and then also some backup for those points? You don't want to just drag it on the whole way through. You probably, like, I found that the best way to do that was I had 2 or 3 anecdotes that I used to build from there, and like, these are my philosophies, these are my anecdotes, going from there. And then lastly, I'm interested in the best ways to incorporate specific examples or strategies in a teaching statement, in addition to overarching information on student outcome goals, prior experience, etc. So this is leading from that last one. I used backwards design here, where I started from, these are the arguments I want to make. So how do I want to convey that? So why did I want to convey it? Those were all important building blocks. And then once I had that framed out, I thought back of what are some really quick examples that get my point across. And I'm only going to use those things. If they don't get my point across, or they get it across, but I have something else that also does, it got cut, which was painful. And having a writing partner was really helpful to be like, you don't need that. You don't need that. You might wonder, how do I get started on something like this? Right? Like, how do I even decide what concepts or philosophy bits to include? That's where, for me, what I started with was a teaching statement starter activity that I learned about at a conference. Essentially what this is, and here we go. So let's yeah. So, oh no, that's the wrong one. Shoot, there, directions. That would have been the right one to pick. So these are the directions for a teaching philosophy card sort. So these researchers came up with this idea of there's a bunch of different philosophies around education, and they might speak to you, they might not. Excuse me. And the process is for this activity is essentially, no, there wasn't good. Here we go. There's a bunch of cards that you print out, and you look at each card. It'll have a different thing, like community building or problem solving or stuff like that. And you put them in piles of like, this matters to me, it doesn't matter to me, matters to me, it doesn't matter to me. And you go through, and eventually you end up with your final 10 or 12. You be the decider on this one. And from there, you rank them of how important they are. And there you see like what goes together, what doesn't go together. Can I group it into 2 to 4 focus points that I'll then build my statement around? And then you might want to pick like, oh, here's my anecdote that fits one of those, or 1 or 2 of those. Here's another one that fits another 2. And there you've built off your anecdotes that support your philosophy. And so I'm going through it kind of quick, but like, right here are the fronts of the cards, and actually on the back of the card, when you print it out, it'll be the researcher or the school of philosophy that is connected to that actual teaching philosophy. We're about to jump into breakout rooms, but if you want like the actual primary literature associated with it, that's also in this folder. Please feel free to take these, use them as you feel fit. And at the end, if you have more questions about it, happy to answer those questions. So that's my intro. That's my whole thing. Yes, I can.
Great. I'm going to stop the recording.